Shocker. Imagine my surprise. Just imagine my surprise when Uncle Casey found out that the WNBA is struggling to maintain their ratings without Caitlin Clark. To make matters worse, and this is something I have definitely noticed in the last 3 or 4 weeks, especially since the All-Star game.
The WNBA just got a painful reality check, and it's spelled without Caitlin Clark. Ratings are tanking faster than a team coached by Stephanie White in crunch time. One groin injury, and suddenly the historic growth narrative looks like a bad marketing slogan. Question is, can this league survive without its biggest draw for even a month? What's your take? Does anyone really tune in for the other stars when Clark's not playing?
And that problem is Caitlin Clark not playing in WNBA games. Now, what all does this affect? The ratings are plummeting. Guys, there's ratings for a couple of these games that are eye-poppingly bad. We're talking about down in unrivaled territory.
So here's the setup. The league had one magic formula for big TV numbers this year. Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese. That's it. That was their cash cow matchup. Chicago Sky versus Indiana Fever. You didn't need marketing geniuses in a conference room to figure it out. Just two of the most recognizable names on the same court, 5 times in one season.
Be struggling to maintain interest. Now, in fairness to the dump, the ratings I'm about to share with you guys, they're not bad. Matter of fact, some of them are actually good, at least when compared to what this dump used to draw, which was nothing. But the reason I think the WNBA is in trouble has less to do with these ratings and more to do with what I think is coming.
The problem? When you don't protect your stars, they don't stick around. Clark has been out for a month and a day with a groin injury. Soft tissue, the kind that needs actual healing time, not tape it up and go. Reese, out for the last week and a half. So this past Saturday, the WNBA's so-called golden matchup had neither of its golden ticket players on the court. And the results? Oh boy, lowest ratings these two teams have had since Caitlin Clark entered the league. Not lower than average, low. Rock bottom. We can't even crack last year's numbers, low. Out of sight, out of mind. Let's walk through the numbers because they tell the entire story. First meeting this year? Huge. 2.7 million average viewers on ABC, peaking at 3.1 million. That's up 115% from last year's ABC season average. It was the perfect storm. Clark's foul controversy, her triple-double, the Sky getting destroyed, the infamous investigation. It all came from that game. Second meeting? Still strong, but a step down. Primetime on CBS, 8 p.m. slot. 1.92 million viewers. Still one of the most watched WNBA regular season games since 2001. At the time, it was the 8th largest in over 20 years. That's the power of having both stars on the floor, or at least the promise of it. Then came the third meeting on ABC, and the drop-off started to get ugly. From 2.7 million to 1.9 million, now down to 1.5 million. That's 1.2 million people deciding, nah, I'm good, and not coming back for round 3. And remember, I covered this at the time, 1.5 million average viewers made that game the lowest viewed Fever versus Sky matchup since last year's 1.53 million. That's with Clark still playing, by the way. Now we get to this past Saturday. Same primetime slot. Same network, CBS. Same matchup. And they didn't even crack 1.4 million. Try 1.3 million. Which means over 500,000 viewers said, without Clark, pass. So from May 22nd to August 10th, this marquee matchup has lost 1.4 million viewers. And that's not some tiny seasonal dip. That's catastrophic in TV terms. Networks hate that trend. Advertisers hate that trend. And I can guarantee you Kathy Engelbert hates that trend. Because here's the thing. Without Clark, the Fever's national interest vanishes. Fans aren't tuning in for Kelsey Mitchell ISO plays. They're not rearranging their weekend for Lexi Hull. And they're sure as hell not watching for the officiating circus we get every game.
Regular season. And the craziest thing about this last groin injury with Caitlin Clark is how it's been covered. The day after she had the groin injury, she was listed as day-to-day. And then a couple weeks after that, then she was listed to being out indefinitely. Now, ESPN had August 12th as the circled return date for Caitlin Clark to get back onto the court. And just yesterday, she was listed as a game time decision for today's game against the Dallas Wings. And then after practice yesterday, Coach Stephanie White basically came out and said, like, no, Caitlin Clark hasn't even been practicing. So they changed it from a game time decision to her being out.
So what happens? The WNBA gets desperate. You start hearing the whispers. Hey, Fever, can you tease a Caitlin Clark return? Just dangle it in front of the fans. Give us something to bump these numbers back up. It's a play straight out of the PR Desperation Handbook. String the audience along without actually delivering.
Place, and I get it to a certain extent. The fans, the media does not need to know every little thing that's going on with Caitlin Clark's injuries, especially a star player like that. We will never know all the information, nor should we know all the information, and that's actually good for Caitlin. It protects her for when she does come back on the court. She can't be targeted. Teams can't use a certain injury or ailment against her if people don't really know what is going on. But the reporting of her timeline in general, there has been no rhyme or reason to what has been shared about it. To put her as a game time decision for today's game, and then Coach Stephanie White basically coming out and saying she has done no practicing with the team, that's crazy. And I brought it up in my video yesterday.
But here's the catch. Clark's injury isn't one you rush back from unless you want to risk a re-tear or making it chronic.
Throw her back in the mix when all of these teams are at peak condition, and we already know what happens when Caitlin Clark gets back out on the court. Teams play defense on her differently. They play extra physical with her. There's all of these different factors that come into play. That's why I'm sort of leaning to the point of maybe Caitlin should be out for the rest of the season. Maybe this season is just done for her. Maybe it doesn't make sense for her to come back into the mix if the Fever aren't contenders. Are the Fever contenders at this point? I'm just not so sure. Do you risk another injury that can again compound and turn into something else down the line?
And you'd think a league that depends on her for this much of their TV relevance would, actually protect her in the first place. But no. This is what happens when you allow constant targeting, no consistent whistles, and officiating that treats your biggest draw like she's a rookie walk-on at an open gym. And if you think this only affects Fever games, think again. Let's check the numbers for other games without Clark. Sun vs. Sunday, 180,000 viewers. Dream vs. Mercury, 160,000. If growth is as massive as the League and Players Association want you to believe, those NBA TV numbers would be at least 300,000, minimum 250,000. But they're not even hitting 200K without the Caitlin Clark stimulus package. That's what this really is, a stimulus package for the entire league. Clark plays, numbers spike. Clark sits, numbers crater. And the WNBA's been banking on her so heavily that without her, they look exposed. And it's not like the league didn't see this coming. The warning signs were there from day one. You've got your most valuable player in terms of marketability and ratings taking harder hits than most NFL wide receivers and getting fewer calls than a telemarketer in airplane mode. Landing space violations? Ignored. Arm grabs on drives? Ignored. Clear hacks at the rim? Play on. Now ask yourself, if Clark had the same whistle that Paige Buchers gets, would she still be playing right now? I'd say yes. The Fever would probably be a top 3 seed, and you wouldn't have this ratings death spiral happening in August. But instead, we're here. The bubble might be bursting. Owners are seeing the charts. The drop is so obvious you don't need an MBA to understand it. From 3.1 million peaks to 1.3 million and NBA TV games struggling to break 200K, the trajectory is straight down without the one player the league should be protecting at all costs. And here's the real kicker. This isn't just about the present. Every week Clark is out, casual fans find something else to watch. They break the habit of tuning in. And once you lose that habit, good luck getting it back, especially when the alternative is watching teams full of stars the casual audience couldn't name if you spotted them the first and last names. The league's marketing is basically Clark and other people. And the second half of that sentence isn't pulling viewers. And here's the dangerous part for the WNBA. TV networks don't have patience for wait until our star is healthy. ESPN, CBS, ABC. They pay for consistent numbers, not only good when our top draw is active. When they see 1 million+ viewers vanish the moment Clark's not in uniform, they start rethinking how many games they want to commit to next year. Because if you're a network executive, you're not putting your money into a product that collapses every time one player misses time. That's not sustainable, and it sure doesn't give you leverage in the next TV deal. The owners know it, the league knows it, and instead of fixing the problem at the root, protecting the star who props up the whole thing, they're out here dangling fake game time decision updates to squeeze out a temporary ratings bump. Let's be honest, we've all seen this trick before. Game time decision in sports often means we know they're not playing, but maybe you'll buy a ticket or tune in just in case. And it works. Once, maybe twice. After that, fans catch on. They stop believing you. And nothing kills ratings faster than fans thinking you're just running a con for attention.
Should not be thrown back into any mix if she doesn't have significant practices under her belt before she goes into game speed. You can try to simulate game speed as much as you want in practice. You will never be able to. Game speed is game speed. There's also a lot more adrenaline, all of these different things pumping when you're playing in front of a sold out crowd that the Indiana Fever do every single night. If I'm their coach, she needs to practice for at minimum a week. At the minimum, she needs to be doing everything in practice for at least a week before you throw her back in the mix. Now you're going to throw her back in the mix when all of these teams are at peak condition.
The problem for the WNBA is they've made Caitlin Clark the hook for almost everything this season. Highlights, promos, primetime slots, merchandise pushes. And when the hook's gone, you're left with, what? A bunch of teams that draw less than some high school boys' basketball state championships. That's not even an exaggeration. Some of those games crack 250K on local streams. And then there's the league's favorite talking point, growth. Oh, the growth. We've heard it all year. Biggest season ever. Record-breaking viewership. Merchandise flying off the shelves. And yet, here's the reality. Take Clark out of the picture, and the growth shrinks faster than a balloon left out in the sun. You can't call it league-wide growth when it's really one-player growth. That's like saying the Bulls of the 90s made basketball itself more popular. No, Jordan made basketball more popular. Big difference. Now, here's what the WNBA doesn't want to talk about. The long-term damage. Let's say Clark's out another 2 weeks. That's 2 more weeks of primetime games underperforming. That's 2 more weeks of casual viewers forming new habits, watching other sports, or skipping basketball altogether. You think they're all coming back the moment she's cleared? Some will, sure. But a chunk of them are gone for good. And the playoffs? Oh, the playoffs will be interesting. Because if Clark's return doesn't immediately spike numbers back to May levels, what's the excuse then? You can't say, well, we just need more time. No, if the whole season has been marketed around her, her comeback should be the ratings jackpot. If it's not, that tells you something very ugly about the league's supposed momentum. Also, let's not ignore the elephant in the room. The targeting, the officiating, the let's rough her up because the league won't stop us defense. This groin injury didn't happen in a vacuum. You don't spend weeks limping around after a harmless bump. You get there by taking constant contact and never getting the whistle that protects you from cumulative damage. If Clark had been officiated like a star from day one, we probably wouldn't even be talking about her missing games right now. She'd be gearing up for that next Fever Sky meeting. The ratings would be back over 2 million. And Kathy Engelbert would be smiling ear to ear in front of every camera she could find. Instead, she's got a product that's bleeding viewers and a media landscape openly mocking the historic growth storyline. Let's also remember, Angel Reese being out doesn't help. The league got lucky that the Clark versus Reese dynamic caught fire with fans, but they didn't protect either player from the physical grind. Now both are sidelined, and the WNBA's marquee matchup is just 2 middle-of-the-pack teams without their stars, drawing numbers that make network execs start calling their golf buddies instead of watching the second half. And that's another thing. The Fever without Clark aren't just less marketable, they're less competitive. The offense is a mess, spacing is worse, and defenses can key in on one or two options without worrying about Clark pulling up from 28 feet. That's not fun basketball for casual viewers. They're not tuning in to watch half-court sets die in the corner or turnover fests in the fourth quarter. So what's the fix? Well, short-term, you milk the possible return angle for as long as you can without making fans hate you. Tease the idea that she's close. Have her courtside smiling and signing autographs. Drop just enough video of her doing light drills that fans think, maybe next game. That'll get you a temporary bump. But long-term, you either fix the officiating and protect your stars, or you admit this league lives and dies on one player's availability. Because let's be real, this historic growth they keep talking about is built on a fragile foundation. The second Clark's not out there, ratings drop like a rock. That's not growth, that's dependency. And any business that's completely dependent on one asset is a bad month away from panic mode. Look, the owners see the numbers, the networks see the numbers, the advertisers see the numbers. You don't have to be a basketball genius to realize that if Clark's absence can tank viewership by over 1 million for your best matchup, you've got a problem that's bigger than one injury. You've got a product that can't stand on its own. And here's the irony. The WNBA has some really good players, skilled, marketable players who could draw more attention if the league actually promoted them properly. But they don't get the spotlight, they don't get the marketing machine, so when Clark's out, there's no backup plan. No second wave of stars to keep the casual fans engaged. It's Caitlin Clark or bust. And right now, without her, it's bust. One player's injury just exposed the WNBA's entire business model, and the numbers aren't lying. If they don't fix this dependency problem, networks and fans will move on faster than you can say growth. So what's your call? Can the league survive without Clark, or is this the start of a collapse? Hit like, drop your take, and subscribe.